Hi, everybody. My name is Steffi Hogan. My pronouns are she and her, and I am the Director of UX at Red Argyle. So today, let's talk about AI because everybody else is, so why not? It's taking over the world, and we see it everywhere in customer service and AI-generated content, hiring tools, healthcare diagnostics, and it's tempting to think that if you just plug AI into your business, it's going to solve all of your problems. But here's the thing. AI is only as good as the data you feed it. So that's what we'll talk about today. How can we use good UX, particularly when we're designing forms and data collection systems, to make sure that the data we're collecting is accurate, reliable, not biased, and inclusive, all that before we get into AI. So let's start with what happens when the data you use is flawed. We've all seen examples of things going awry. So in 2018, we'll go back a bit. In 2018, Amazon had to scrap their AI recruiting tool because it turned out to be biased against women. So it was trained on resumes from the last decade, and since tech has been mostly dominated by men, the AI began penalizing resumes that included the word women's, as in women's chess club captain or like women's soccer team or whatever. So it downgraded the women applicants, and instead of eliminating bias, the AI actually doubled down on it. Why? Well, because the data it trained on was biased. And it's not just in hiring. Facial recognition is another example. We've probably all heard this by now. Some facial recognition systems have been shown to have much higher error rates than for people of color than for white men, especially Black women. In fact, a study from MIT showed that the error rates for darker skinned women were as high as 34% compared to less than 1% for lighter skinned males. That's kind of a problem. And the reason for it is because the system wasn't trained on a diverse enough set of faces, and it led to biased outcomes. And then there's healthcare. One AI tool was used to predict which patients needed extra care, and it was found to be biased against Black patients because it was trained on healthcare spending data, assuming that if you spent more money, you were sicker and needed more healthcare. However, because of some systemic issues we kind of have, Black patients often spent less on healthcare, which meant the AI wrongly assumed that they didn't need extra care when they actually did. And then there are poor business decisions that are made on predictive AI without, let's say, certain guardrails in place. This one is my favorite. Target's predictive AI. It was based on customer data collected through forms and shopping patterns, and it was used to send targeted advertisements to customers. One of the most notable outcomes was the AI's ability to predict whether or not a customer was pregnant based on their purchasing behavior. And that led to an incident where Target sent pregnancy-related ads to a teenage girl, inadvertently revealing her pregnancy to her father before she had a chance to tell him. So the root cause is that, okay, the data collection was based on customer shopping behaviors. It was accurate data, very, very accurate, but it lacked the context of social sensitivity. So the forms or whatever they used to collect this data didn't ask for explicit consent for using anybody's information, and it didn't properly factor in the personal nature of the predictions, which caused a bit of reputational damage to Target. And it kind of highlights how AI-driven business decisions, even when they're based on accurate data, can still result in poor customer experiences if the context and human element are overlooked. So when we're talking data accuracy, it all starts with how we collect the data in the first place. Think about it. If we don't design the forms and input fields correctly, people are going to make mistakes when they enter their information. And those mistakes they become part of your data. So the answer is how we set up our forms. Good form design is a really good start. 3 key areas of form design that can make or break your data is choosing the correct input, having good validation rules, and having good error and help text. Let's start with choosing the right inputs. One of the easiest ways to make sure you're getting accurate data is by guiding users to enter the correct information from the start. So let's take something as simple as asking for a country. If you give someone a free text box to type in, you're going to get all kinds of variations. You'll get US, USA, US and USA with dots. You'll get United States sometimes, and then believe it or not, you'll even get some misspellings. You could get untied stats instead. So instead of doing free-form text, just use a drop-down menu with a list of the countries, and then you've instantly mitigated that complication right there. The same goes for dates. If you leave a date field open, first of all, that's impossible to validate. There might be a genius out. Maybe AI can validate it now. I don't know. But someone will type in to 10/2022, and another person might type in 10/2/2022. And if you're a global company, that can mean 2 very different things. So use a date picker instead. Smart defaults. You can make people's lives a whole lot easier and get better data by pre-filling with common responses or using autofill based on previous entries. For example, if someone enters their zip code, why not autofill their city and state? It's one less thing they have to worry about, and your data stays consistent. That whole shipping and billing address thing. If you type in your shipping address, like Amazon, is your billing address the same? And it has a checkbox. You hit the checkbox, it automatically fills out the billing address with what you typed in already. Things like that are very good for consistent data. Validation. There's a bit to talk about here. It is very important to use validation rules to make sure that your data is accurate. That's right. There are 2 kinds, 2 main ways to do it: real-time validation or inline validation, and then post-submit validation. So let me paint a picture for you. You are filling out a form and you accidentally leave off part of your email address, like @gmail.com. You forget a few other things, mistypes. You hit submit, and then the form refreshes telling you that you've got all these errors that are entries that are invalid. Now you have to go back and fix it and submit it all over again. And if it's a really long form, just think about the time that takes. And this is what happens when you use post-submit validation. Errors are only flagged after you hit submit, which is kind of annoying, and it slows things down. Worst case, the user gets frustrated and they leave, and you lose all of the data you could potentially have had. Real-time validation is a much better experience for many things. As soon as you type something incorrect, the system will flag it, right? And maybe it'll highlight it, the field in red, or it'll display some red error text under it or near it, which can help users fix the issue immediately without having to submit the entire form. So it's faster, it's smoother. Now, real-time validation is better in most cases, but you still need to have post-submit validation for things like checking whether all required fields are filled in. It's good to have a backup to catch anything the user might have missed. And then we have error handling. So how many times have you seen the error message that says invalid input with no explanation of what's wrong? It's kind of frustrating. I hate those. They drive me batty. And it doesn't help the user fix the problem. So if someone makes a mistake, give them a clear, specific error message. Tell them what went wrong and how to fix it. Instead of saying invalid input here for credits, we could say the number has to be between 0 and 40. So the error messages, right, those are things that we help users fix. It's after something goes wrong. But what if we could guide users before they make mistakes? That's where help text, placeholders, and tooltips come in. Now, help text can go a long way in preventing errors before they happen. You add shorter explanations. You can use tooltips, little info icons next to field labels or what have you, giving the users a little more information, some context that will help them fill out those fields appropriately. And placeholders are fantastic for providing a quick example of the format that you expect. If you're asking for a phone number, the placeholder could show, a regular phone number, whatever your phone number format would be. If it's asking for a URL, you could put in must start with www. Or just something example.com is what I usually do. But make sure, and this is a really big tip and it's super important, make sure that they're only examples, not instructions. Because of course, when you go into the field, the placeholder text goes away. And if they were instructions, then the user loses all of the stuff that they need to reference to be able to give you the correct data. And again, tooltips, great way to provide even more context without cluttering the form. When the user hovers over those little question marks or info whatevers, they get the more information that they need. And it's perfect for optional or more advanced fields where you don't need to explain everything up front, but you want to give users a way to get more information if they need it. All right, so using all of those tools, the help text, the placeholders, tooltips, that way we can guide our users before they even have a chance to make a mistake, which is super awesome. That's what we want to do. Designing forms to reduce bias. How the heck do we do that? That sounds rather challenging, but there are ways, my friends. It's really important to design a form to make sure that the data you collect isn't biased, right? So let's go over, I have 10 little tips for you. First of all, avoid leading questions. Leading questions push users towards a particular answer. A form should be neutral and not suggest or imply a right or preferred answer. So a leading question could be, why did you enjoy our product? And that assumes that the user actually enjoyed the product. Instead, ask, how would you rate your experience with our product? Now, leading questions, the reason it's important is leading questions can skew the data towards a more favorable outcome, which will mask any dissatisfaction or other crucial feedback that you might otherwise have gotten. Use inclusive language. The wording of your form can unintentionally exclude or alienate certain groups of people. So use language that's inclusive, gender neutral, and culturally sensitive. And an example of this would be, instead of asking for mother's name and father's name, ask for parent and guardian's name to account for all the different family structures. Use gender neutral terms. Like if you're collecting information about gender, offer inclusive options like male, female, non-binary, prefer not to say, or even allow users to self-identify and describe how they identify. So be aware of the importance of context for each form. You don't need to collect it if it doesn't apply to whatever you're talking about it. So it might not be necessary to collect it all. And why that matters is because using exclusive language can lead to marginalizing groups. I can't talk today. Using exclusive language can lead to marginalized groups, there we go, feeling alienated and underrepresented in the data. Okay, for certain demographic data points like gender, ethnicity, or outcome, always provide an option for users to opt out or offer another option. Forcing users to choose from limited options can lead to frustration on their end and inaccurate data on yours. They might just put in something to get through the form. Instead of forcing someone to choose from a predefined list of job titles, provide other field where users can describe their role if none of the listed things fit quite right. People's identity and circumstances don't always fit neatly into predefined categories. Surprise. Forcing them to choose one can lead to them feeling excluded, or again, they're just going to pick something to get through the form and your data is not going to be accurate. This is a really interesting one, at least to me it is. When you're using drop-down menus, or multiple choice options. Randomizing the order of the choices can help eliminate bias because people tend to select the options that are closer to the top of the list. So if you have a survey asking users to rate product features, randomize the order in which the features are listed in that little survey to make sure that one feature isn't disproportionately selected just because it's first. If your form includes images, videos, or examples, make sure they reflect diversity and avoid cultural or regional biases. So if you're using a form to survey people's purchasing habits, make sure that the images of the products or services cater to a variety of cultural backgrounds. Don't rely on region-specific examples. If you are collecting sensitive information, race, gender, income, clearly explain why that data is needed and how it will be used. The transparency will help users feel more comfortable. It'll reduce their reluctance to give you the information in the first place. So if you're asking for demographic data, include a brief note saying, like, we collect information to ensure our products serve people of all backgrounds. Requiring too many fields to be filled in can lead to biased data because people might just give incomplete or inaccurate responses just so they can get through the form quickly. Again, we don't want to be sitting here filling out your form for days. I have done this. If you have done this, tell me in the chat. Only make fields mandatory if it is absolutely necessary. Instead of requiring users to input their race or income, leave it as optional unless it is actually essential to the purpose of the form. And then explain why. Okay, explain why. Only ask for the information that is genuinely needed. This is still kind of in the same theme. Collecting unnecessary data, whether it's required or not, increases the chances of bias because, again, we don't want to sit here filling this out forever. If you are conducting a survey on customer satisfaction, right, there is absolutely no need to ask for the user's marital status unless it directly relates to your analysis, which would be surprised if it ever really did. Yeah, so collecting extra data or like that you just want because is, people will give you irrelevant data, fake answers. They'll get tired. It'll increase user fatigue. It'll reduce engagement. They'll quit the form. Again, you'll lose that data. All right, ensure that your form is accessible to users with disabilities. I preach this all the time. Literally 90% of my talks are on accessible design. And that includes offering screen reader compatibility, appropriate color contrasts, keyboard navigability. I love that word, navigability. Inaccessible forms can lead to data bias because they'll exclude a portion of the population from completing the form. Add descriptive labels for screen readers. I need to stop saying ensure. That's too official. Make sure that all interactive elements are reachable by keyboard and provide enough color contrast, again, for those visual impairments. Now, this is a significant group of users that you would be leaving out, about 20% of the global population, if they can't use your form well. And of course, what is super important, as user experience designers, software, we know in our heart of hearts, we have to test things. Before rolling out your form, test it with a diverse group of users. Get feedback from people with different backgrounds, just to see if any of the questions you've come up with are unclear, are culturally biased, or unnecessarily restrictive. It needs to be intuitive. It needs to be unbiased. Everybody needs to feel comfortable filling it out. Otherwise, you're just not going to get the sampling of data that you want. At the end of the day, the data you collect affects everything. Everything downstream. It affects your AI. And you know what? This is important enough for me to go full screen. Where is it? This one. Here we go. At the end of the day, your data affects everything. How you collect it affects everything that happens after you collect it. it'll affect your AI, of course, because that's what we've been talking about this whole time, but it'll also affect your business decisions, target your customer experience, and your whole entire brand reputation. Bad data equals bad AI. Good data, accurate data, inclusive data, that leads to AI that it works, that's fair, as long as you have appropriate guardrails in place. Let's not out any more children to their parents like that. So if you take one thing away from today, it should be this: invest in your user experience. Make sure you have user experience designers doing working on projects on all kinds, even forms and how they're written. Make sure those forms are designed to collect clean, reliable, and inclusive data, because without that, your AI won't live up to its potential. So I hope that helps. It's shorter than I normally speak, but I hope the content is good for you. I hope it helps you in the future. If you have any questions, reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to chat with you. I hope you're having fun at the conference. Thanks for coming.